Jake Morrison stood near the back wall of the shuttle, watching Earth disappear through the viewport. He had been a security officer for 3 years now, but this was his first trip to an alien world. His hands were steady, his face calm, but inside, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The diplomatic vessel Pathfinder hummed quietly as it traveled through space. Jake shared the shuttle with 3 other humans. Ambassador Lisa Chen sat in the front, reviewing files on her datapad. She was a serious woman in her 50s who had spent years preparing for this mission. Next to her sat Kyle Henderson, the navigator, a young man with quick reflexes and a friendly smile. Across from Jake sat Megan Foster, the communications officer. She was busy checking translation devices and making sure all their equipment worked properly. They were heading to the Veylon homeworld. The Veylons were an advanced alien species who had made first contact with humanity 15 years ago. Since then, humans had joined the Galactic Coalition, a group of different alien races who worked together for trade and peace. But humans were still new, still unproven. Some aliens thought humans were interesting. Others thought they were too primitive to matter much. This trip was important. The Veylons controlled valuable trade routes and had technology that could help Earth. The ambassador's job was to negotiate agreements that would benefit both species. Jake's job was much simpler. Stay quiet, blend in, keep the ambassador safe. The shuttle dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and suddenly the Veylon homeworld filled the viewport. Jake caught his breath. The planet glowed with a soft blue and purple light. 3 moons hung in the sky like jewels. Massive structures orbited the world, stations so large they looked like cities floating in space. Beautiful, isn't it? Kyle said, grinning at Jake. Jake nodded. Never seen anything like it. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere. Jake saw cities below, made of crystal and metal that seemed to grow from the ground like plants. Towers twisted upward in impossible spirals. Gardens floated in the air between buildings. Everything looked both ancient and futuristic at the same time. They landed in a courtyard outside a massive palace. The building rose above them, made of a material that looked like white crystal but shimmered with rainbow colors when the light hit it. Veylon guards stood at attention, wearing armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal. A tall Veylon approached as they exited the shuttle. The aliens looked humanoid, but different. They had pale lavender skin, large eyes that shifted between violet and silver, and long fingers with an extra joint. This Veylon wore elaborate robes marked with symbols Jake didn't understand. "Welcome, honored guests from Earth," the Veylon said. The translator device in Jake's ear converted the melodic alien language into English. "I am Soren, attendant to the royal court. Please, follow me." They walked through hallways that seemed to defy gravity. Water flowed upward along some walls. Plants grew in midair without soil. Soft light came from everywhere and nowhere. Jake tried not to stare like a tourist, but everything amazed him. Soren led them to a massive courtyard open to the sky. Hundreds of Veylons filled the space, all dressed in flowing robes of different colors. They stood in precise formations, creating patterns that probably had meaning Jake didn't know. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat 3 figures on elaborate thrones. The king and queen, Jake guessed, and between them a younger Veylon woman. "The royal family will receive you now," Soren whispered. "Remember, bow when I signal. Do not speak unless spoken to directly. And please, stay on the marked path." Jake fell into position behind the ambassador. His training kicked in automatically. He scanned the crowd, looking for threats, old habits from his military days. Everything seemed calm, formal, controlled. The ambassador walked forward along a path marked by glowing stones. Jake followed, keeping his distance. The Veylon court watched them with curious eyes. Jake felt like a specimen under study. They reached the platform. Soren gave a signal, and they all bowed. The king spoke, his voice deep and resonant. The translator worked quickly. "Ambassador Chen, we welcome you and your companions. We are pleased to begin discussions between our peoples. Your Majesty, we are honored by your invitation. the ambassador replied smoothly. The queen gestured to the young Valen woman between them. This is our daughter, Princess Zara Lynn. She will serve as your cultural liaison during your stay. Princess Zara Lynn stood. She was tall and graceful, with the same violet eyes as her parents but a more delicate build. She wore robes of deep purple that seemed to shift colors as she moved. When she spoke, her voice was clear and musical. I look forward to learning about your people, she said, looking at each of the humans in turn. Her gaze lingered on Jake for a moment. Curious, the ceremony continued with formal speeches and rituals. Jake tried to pay attention, but his security training kept pulling his focus elsewhere. He noticed the guards positioned around the courtyard. He studied the layout, marking exits and potential dangers out of habit. Then something caught his eye. A small maintenance drone floated near the princess's platform. Valens used these drones for cleaning and repairs. They were common, harmless, but this one moved strangely. Its lights blinked in an irregular pattern. It drifted closer to the platform when it should have stayed back during the ceremony. Jake's instincts screamed at him. Something was wrong. He watched the drone more carefully. It moved closer to the princess. Its casing bulged slightly, like something had been added inside. The light pattern changed to rapid blinking. Jake had seen enough improvised explosives during his military service to recognize the signs. He didn't calculate the political consequences, or worry about protocol. He just moved. He burst from his position, running across the ceremonial space. Valens shouted in surprise. Guards reached for weapons. The ambassador called his name. But Jake only had eyes for the princess. Princess Zara Lynn turned, her violet eyes wide with shock as this human male sprinted toward her. Jake leaped onto the platform and tackled her. His body wrapped around hers as they fell. He twisted in midair, putting himself between her and the drone. The explosion came a heartbeat later. The blast wave hit like a hammer. Jake felt heat and pressure and pain. His ears rang. The world spun. He held the princess tight against his chest as they tumbled across the smooth floor. Debris rained down around them. Smoke filled the air. Jake's body hurt everywhere, but his training kept him focused. He checked the princess. She was breathing, conscious, alive. Her eyes stared into his, filled with shock and something else he couldn't name. Are you hurt? He managed to ask. She shook her head slightly, unable to speak. Jake tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't work right. The world tilted sideways. He saw Valen guards rushing toward them. The king and queen were shouting orders. Kyle and Megan ran forward. The ambassador's face swam in his vision, her mouth moving, but he couldn't hear the words. Princess Zara Lynn's hand touched his face. Her lips moved, saying something urgent, but darkness closed in from the edges of Jake's vision. The last thing he saw was those violet eyes, wide and luminous, staring down at him with an expression no human had ever seen on an alien face before. Then everything went black. Pain woke Jake first. Not terrible pain, but a deep ache that filled his whole body. He became aware of soft fabric beneath him, a gentle humming sound, and voices speaking in that melodic Valen language. The translator device must still be in his ear because he understood the words. The human's vital signs are improving. How long until he wakes? Any moment now, Your Highness. Jake opened his eyes slowly. A crystal ceiling stretched above him, glowing with soft light. He tried to sit up, but hands gently pushed him back down. Valen hands, he realized. He turned his head and saw he was lying on some kind of medical platform in a large chamber. But it wasn't a hospital room. It was a throne room. Valens filled the space. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. They wore elaborate robes in every color imaginable. Some stood near massive pillars carved with alien writing. Others clustered in groups, whispering to each other. Guards in flowing armor lined the walls, and directly in front of Jake's medical platform stood the royal family. The king was a tall, imposing figure with robes of deep gold. The queen wore silver that seemed to contain tiny stars. Between them stood Princess Zara Lynn, dressed now in simple white robes. Her violet eyes watched Jake with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "He's awake," someone announced. The chamber fell silent. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to stare at Jake. He had never felt so exposed in his life. A Valen in healer's robes stepped forward and ran a scanning device over Jake's body. "The human has recovered well," the healer announced. "Our medical technology has repaired most of the damage from the blast. He will be sore for a few days. But there is no permanent injury." Jake sat up slowly this time, and no one stopped him. He looked down at himself. Someone had dressed him in soft gray clothing that wasn't his uniform. Bandages covered his arms where he must have been cut by debris. But the healer was right. Considering he'd been caught in an explosion, he felt surprisingly okay. "Jake." Megan's voice cut through the silence. She pushed through the crowd with Kyle right behind her. They both looked tired but relieved. "Thank God you're awake." "How long was I out?" Jake asked. 2 days, Kyle said. "Man, you scared us." 2 days. Jake's mind struggled with that. He looked past his friends and saw Ambassador Lisa standing near the king. She gave him a slight nod that said both, "I'm glad you're alive, and we have a complicated situation here." The king stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire chamber. "Jake Morrison of Earth," the king began formally, "you have awakened in the presence of the full royal court of Valen. We gather here to address a matter of great importance." Jake slid off the medical platform and stood, though his legs felt shaky. "Your Majesty, I'm honored. But I don't understand. Is everyone okay? Was anyone else hurt in the explosion?" A murmur ran through the Valen crowd. The queen's expression softened slightly. "You were the only one seriously injured," the queen said. "Thanks to your actions. The investigation has determined that the explosion was an assassination attempt. A radical faction opposed to human Valen cooperation tampered with the maintenance drone. It was meant to kill our daughter." Jake looked at Princess Zara Lynn. She stood perfectly still, her face composed. But something in her eyes looked shaken. "I'm glad you're safe, Your Highness," he said simply. More murmurs from the crowd. The princess's eyes widened slightly at his words. The king continued. "Your actions have created a situation without precedent in our history. In Valen culture, saving a member of the royal family creates what we call Shelvar, a life bond. The one who saves must be honored and rewarded according to our oldest traditions." "Oh," Jake said, not sure what else to say. "That's really not necessary. I was just doing my job." The murmuring grew louder. Some Valens looked shocked. Others seemed confused. A tall Valen noble stepped forward from the crowd. He wore robes of deep red with gold embroidery. His face was stern, his eyes cold. "Your Majesty, this presents a significant problem. The traditions of Shelvar were written for Valens. This human is an outsider. He doesn't understand our ways. He cannot be given lands and titles as tradition demands." Another noble, this one in blue robes, spoke up. "Lord Corvan speaks truth. How can we honor a being who doesn't even comprehend what he's done? Look at him. He thinks it was just his job. He has no concept of the sacred nature of Shelvar." Jake felt heat rise in his face. He didn't like being talked about like he wasn't there. But Ambassador Lisa caught his eye and shook her head slightly. "Let them talk," her expression said. "Don't make it worse." The debate raged for several minutes. Some nobles argued for granting Jake land on Valen. Others insisted it was impossible. A few suggested monetary rewards. One elder proposed making Jake a symbolic knight with no real authority. Through it all, Princess Zara Lynn remained silent. She watched Jake with those unreadable violet eyes. Her expression perfectly controlled. Finally, the king raised his hand for silence. "This matter requires careful consideration. The Shelvar bond is sacred. We cannot dismiss it, but neither can we ignore the complexities involved." He turned to Jake. "What do you say, Jake Morrison? What do you want as reward for saving my daughter's life?" Jake looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching him. He thought about what to say. Back home, he'd been a regular guy, a soldier, then a security guard. He'd never wanted fame or fortune. He'd taken this job because it let him see the galaxy and help people. "Your Majesty," Jake said carefully, "I don't want anything. I saw someone in danger, and I reacted. That's what any decent person would do. I'm just glad the princess is safe. That's enough for me." The chamber erupted in noise. Nobles argued with each other. Guards whispered among themselves. The king and queen exchanged a long look that seemed to communicate volumes. Lord Corvin's voice rose above the others. "You see? The human doesn't even want the honor. This proves he doesn't understand. We should simply thank him and send him back to his people." But an older noble in white robes shook her head. "No, Corvan. You miss the point. He saved the princess without thought of reward. That is the purest form of Shelvar. Our ancestors would have honored such an act above all others." The debate continued. Jake felt a headache building. This was way more complicated than he'd expected. He just wanted to stop someone from getting hurt. Now there were political implications and cultural traditions and who knew what else. Ambassador Lisa managed to reach Jake's side. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "I'm fine, but I don't understand what's happening." "You've created a cultural crisis," she explained in a low voice. "Everything in Vaylon society is based on formal rules and logical processes. You acted on pure instinct, without calculation. It fascinates them and frightens them at the same time." The king spoke again, bringing order to the chaos. "The court will convene for 3 days to study our histories and determine the proper course of action. Until then, Jake Morrison, you are a guest of the highest status in this palace. You will be given quarters, attendance, and freedom to move about as you wish. We ask only that you remain here while we deliberate." Jake nodded. "Of course, Your Majesty. Whatever you think is best." The king gestured to Soren, the attendant who had greeted them when they first arrived. "Soren, you will see to our guest's needs. Treat him with the respect due to one who has performed Shelvar." Soren bowed deeply. "It will be my honor, Your Majesty." As Soren led Jake toward a side door, the princess finally moved. She stepped forward, her robes whispering against the floor. "Jake Morrison," she said, her voice clear and formal. "I wish to thank you personally. You risked your life for mine. I am grateful." The words sounded stiff, rehearsed, but her eyes told a different story. They showed confusion, curiosity, and something that might have been the beginning of respect. "You're welcome, Your Highness," Jake said. He didn't know if he should bow, so he just nodded. As he left the throne room, following Soren through corridors of crystal and light, Jake could hear the debate continuing behind him. Voices rose and fell, arguing about tradition and honor, and what to do with a human who had saved a princess without asking for anything in return. Jake just hoped they figured it out soon. He had a feeling these 3 days were going to be very long. The quarters Soren led Jake to were beyond anything he'd ever imagined. The main room had walls that seemed to dissolve into gardens. Plants grew in floating arrangements, their roots dangling in midair, somehow getting nutrients from nothing Jake could see. A bed sat on a raised platform, covered in fabric so soft it felt like touching a cloud. The bathroom had a pool that adjusted its temperature based on his thoughts. Or so Soren claimed. "This is too much," Jake said, staring around. "I don't need all this." Soren tilted his head, a gesture Jake was learning meant confusion. "But you are a guest of highest status. These are the minimum accommodations appropriate to your situation." Jake laughed despite himself. "If this is minimum, I'd hate to see maximum." Over the next day, Jake tried to settle in. Soren brought him food, strange fruits and grains that tasted like nothing on earth but were surprisingly good. The attendant also brought him books and files about Vaylon culture, trying to help him understand the world he'd stumbled into. Jake learned that Vaylons valued logic above all else. Every action had to have a clear purpose and justification. Their society was built on formal agreements, and carefully negotiated relationships. Even friendships were established through ritual exchanges of promises and obligations. It was all very different from Earth. On the second evening, Soren delivered a message. Princess Zara Lynn requests your presence in the Eastern Garden. If you are willing. Jake's heart beat faster, though he wasn't sure why. Of course. Lead the way. The Eastern Garden was a place of impossible beauty. Trees with silver bark grew in spirals toward the sky. Flowers that glowed with their own light filled the air with gentle perfume. A stream flowed upward along one wall, before cascading down in a glittering waterfall. And in the center of it all stood Princess Zara Lynn. She had changed from her formal court robes into something simpler, a flowing dress of pale blue that matched the twilight sky. Her long hair, which she'd worn pinned up in the throne room, now fell loose around her shoulders. She looked younger this way, less like a distant royal figure and more like a person. "Thank you for coming," she said as Jake approached. Her voice was softer than it had been in court, less formal. "Of course, Your Highness. Please, when we are private, you may call me Zara." "The formality grows tiring sometimes," Jake smiled. "Then you can call me just Jake." They walked together through the garden. For a while, neither spoke. Jake wasn't sure what to say. "What did you talk about with an alien princess?" Zara broke the silence. "I wanted to thank you again. Properly this time. Without the entire court watching." "You already thanked me." "No. I said the words the court expected, but I didn't say what I truly felt." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "You saved my life, Jake. You didn't know who I was. You didn't know if I was important or what reward you might receive. You just saw someone in danger and acted. I have never experienced anything like that before." Jake felt uncomfortable under her intense gaze. "I'm sure your guards would have done the same. My guards are bound by law and duty. They protect me because they must. You protected me because you chose to. There is a difference. I guess I never thought about it that way." They resumed walking. Zara led him to a bench beside the upward-flowing stream. They sat, and she asked him about Earth. Jake told her about his childhood in Colorado, about mountains and forests and snow. He told her about his time in the military, about learning to trust his instincts in dangerous situations. He told her about seeing the stars for the first time from space and feeling both tiny and infinite at the same time. Zara listened with fascination. "Your world sounds chaotic," she said, but she was smiling. "Valens prefer order and predictability. We make plans generations in advance. Every child knows their place in society from birth. But you humans seem to make things up as you go along." "Pretty much," Jake agreed. "We're good at adapting. Maybe too good sometimes. We get ourselves into trouble and then figure out how to get out of it." "Is that what you did? Got yourself into trouble?" Jake laughed. "Yeah, I guess I did. Your whole court is arguing about me right now." Zara's smile faded. "They argue because they're afraid. You represent something unknown. Humans act on emotion and instinct. We Valens evolved from solitary hunters. We learned to survive by careful planning and logical decisions. Your people evolved as pack animals, protecting each other without thought. These are very different approaches to life. Is one better than the other? I don't know," Zara admitted. "I used to think our way was superior. Emotion leads to mistakes, or so I was taught. But then you threw yourself in front of an explosion to save me. There was no time for logic or planning. You just acted, and it was the right thing to do." She looked at him with those violet eyes. "How did you know? How did you decide so quickly?" Jake thought about it. "I didn't decide. I saw you were in danger, and my body just moved. It's like asking how I know to breathe. I just do." "That's what frightens them," Zara said quietly. "And what fascinates me." They talked for hours. Jake told her about human movies and music, about sports and games, and all the messy, emotional ways humans live their lives. Zara told him about Valen philosophy, about their complex system of mathematics that could predict social movements, about meditation techniques that let them see patterns in the stars. Jake made her laugh by teaching her a simple card game. Poker, he called it. She was terrible at bluffing because Valens were trained to always tell the exact truth, but she enjoyed trying, and her laughter sounded like music. In turn, she taught him the basics of Valens star mapping meditation. He had to close his eyes and imagine the constellations, then let his mind drift between them. He wasn't very good at it. His thoughts kept jumping around. But Zara said that was very human of him, and she smiled when she said it. When the palace lights began to dim for the night cycle, Zara stood reluctantly. I should return. The court will expect me to attend morning deliberations. How's that going, by the way? The whole deciding what to do with me thing? Zara's expression darkened. Not well. Lord Corvan leads a faction that wants to send you home with simple thanks and monetary compensation. Others want to grant you lands and titles, but they're arguing about the details. And a few, she hesitated. A few what? A few believe you're a threat. They think humans are using you to gain influence in our court. That you staged the rescue somehow. Jake's jaw dropped. That's crazy. How would I even do that? I know. I've told them so. But they don't trust humans yet. We're still learning about your people. She reached out and touched his hand briefly, a gesture that seemed to surprise her as much as him. I trust you, Jake. I wanted you to know that. Before he could respond, she walked away, her blue dress flowing behind her like water. Jake made his way back to his quarters in a daze. Soren met him at the door with evening refreshments and a knowing look. The princess seems different after your conversation, the attendant observed. Different how? Happier? Lighter? She smiles more easily tonight than I have seen in years. Soren paused. The court grows concerned about the amount of time she spends with you. We're just talking, getting to know each other. Yes, but to Valens, time is a resource carefully allocated. The princess spends time with you that she could spend with potential suitors or political allies. This sends a message. Jake hadn't thought about it that way. Should I not meet with her? That is not my decision to make. I merely inform you of the situation. Soren bowed and left. Jake lay on his too-soft bed, staring at the ceiling that showed the night sky. Real stars, Soren had explained, transmitted in real time from the palace observatory. He found the constellation Zara had taught him earlier. It was called the Protector in Valen mythology. A hero who gave his life to save his people. He thought about her laugh, about the way her eyes lit up when she got excited explaining something. He thought about how natural it felt to sit beside her in that garden, talking like they'd known each other for years instead of days. This was getting complicated. The next day, Kyle and Megan visited him. They brought news from Ambassador Lisa. The trade negotiations were going well, surprisingly. The Valens seemed impressed by how the humans had handled the crisis. You've become a symbol, Megan explained. The human who saved the princess. It's all over their news networks. Some Valens think it proves humans are worthy partners. Others think you're an anomaly. Great, Jake muttered. No pressure. Kyle grinned. The ambassador wants you to know you're doing fine. Just be yourself. Apparently that's working. After his friends left, Jake wandered the palace. Guards nodded to him respectfully now. Nobles who had ignored him before stopped to introduce themselves. He was becoming known, and he wasn't sure he liked it. In a quiet corridor lined with portraits of ancient Valen rulers, he found Princess Zara standing alone. She studied a particular painting. Her expression troubled. That's Lord Corvan in his younger days, she said without turning. He was my father's closest advisor for 30 years. I've known him all my life. Jake moved to stand beside her. You don't sound happy about that. He opposes every suggestion I make regarding you. He wants you gone, sent back to Earth as quickly as possible. She turned to him. Why do you think that is? Jake looked at the painting. Even in paint, Corvan's eyes seemed cold. Maybe he thinks I'm a bad influence. Or maybe he fears what you represent. Change, a different way of thinking. She smiled sadly. Sometimes I think he fears that most of all. The third day began with urgent news. Megan burst into Jake's quarters early in the morning, her face pale and worried. Kyle followed right behind her, carrying a data pad. "We've got a problem," Megan said without preamble. "A big one." Jake sat up quickly. "What's wrong?" Kyle activated the data pad, showing lines of encrypted text. "I've been monitoring communications like the ambassador asked. Normal security stuff. But last night, I caught something strange. Encrypted messages being sent from inside the palace to an unknown location outside the capital. Could just be normal business," Jake said, though his instincts told him otherwise. "That's what I thought at first," Megan replied. "But look at the timing. Every message was sent right after major court deliberations about you. Someone is feeding information to outsiders about what the court is deciding." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "The people who tried to kill the princess. That's what we think," Kyle confirmed. "And it gets worse. We managed to decrypt part of one message. It mentioned something called the judgment ceremony." "What's that?" "It's happening tomorrow," Megan explained. "The final day of deliberation. The king will announce his decision about your reward in front of the entire court. It's a massive public event. Thousands of Valens will attend." Jake understood immediately. A perfect target for another attack. Exactly. "But we can't prove anything yet. Just encrypted messages and suspicions. If we go to the king without proof, it'll look like we're paranoid. Or worse, trying to manipulate the situation." Jake paced across his room, thinking hard. "We need to find out who's sending the messages, and what they're planning." "I was hoping you'd say that," a new voice said from the doorway. Princess Zara stood there, wearing a hooded cloak over her formal robes. She looked different, determined, and maybe a little frightened. "Your Highness," Jake said, surprised. "How long have you been there?" "Long enough to hear about the encrypted messages." She stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. "I've had my own concerns about what's happening in the court. Some of the nobles have been acting strangely, whispering in corners, ending conversations when I approach." Megan showed her the datapad. "Do you recognize any of these transmission codes?" Zara studied the screen, her violet eyes scanning the information. Her expression grew darker. "These codes, they're assigned to senior nobles. Only those with the highest clearance can use them." "Can you narrow it down?" Kyle asked. "Who would have both the access and the motive?" Zara was quiet for a long moment. "Lord Corvin has been the most vocal opponent of honoring Jake. He has the access. And he's been surprisingly insistent about sending Jake home quickly, before the judgment ceremony." Jake thought about the older noble, about the cold eyes in that portrait. "But why? What does he gain from attacking you? From opposing human-Valon relations?" "How? Power," Zara said softly. "If I had died, my older brother would inherit the throne. He's easily influenced, especially by his advisors. Corvan has spent years cultivating that relationship." She looked at Jake. "And as for opposing human relations, Corvan is a traditionalist. He believes in Valon superiority. The idea that a human could perform true Shelvar challenges everything he thinks he knows about the universe." "We need proof," Megan said. "Something concrete. Then we'll get it," Jake said firmly. "Tonight, before the ceremony tomorrow. We can't let them hurt anyone else." Zara looked at him with something like admiration. "You're willing to risk yourself again, even though you could just stay quiet, accept whatever reward the king offers, and go home safely. People are in danger. Of course I'm going to help." That simple statement seemed to affect Zara deeply. She stared at him for a moment, then nodded. "I know someone who might assist us. Captain Arvin leads my personal guard. He's loyal and discreet. If anyone can help us investigate without alerting Corvan, it's him." They spent the day planning. Captain Arvin turned out to be a stern but honorable Valen, who listened to their evidence without judgment. He agreed that the threat was real and needed investigation. "Lord Corvan's quarters are in the West Wing," Arvin said. "If he's involved, there may be evidence there. Communication devices, records of contact with the radical faction. Can we search his rooms?" Jake asked. Arvin shook his head. Not without the king's permission. And if we ask for that, Corvin will know we suspect him. He could destroy evidence or flee. Then we need to catch him in the act, Zara said. Tonight. The messages have been sent every evening after deliberations. If we monitor his quarters, we might see him transmit another one. It was a risky plan. If they were wrong, they would offend a powerful noble and create a diplomatic incident. If they were right, but couldn't prove it, the consequences could be even worse. But lives were at stake. They all agreed to proceed. That evening, Jake found himself hiding in an alcove near Corvin's quarters with Zara and Arvin. Kyle and Megan monitored communications from a secure room, ready to intercept any transmissions. The palace had grown quiet as most Valens retired for the night. They waited for what felt like hours. Jake's legs cramped from staying still so long. Beside him, Zara barely seemed to breathe, her training in court composure serving her well. Then Corvan's door opened. The noble emerged, looking both ways down the corridor, before walking quickly toward the eastern terraces. They followed at a distance, moving silently through the shadows. Corvan reached a private terrace overlooking the city. He pulled out a small communication device and began speaking in hushed tones. They were too far away to hear clearly, but Arvin had brought a recording device that would capture everything. They watched as Corvan's conversation grew more animated. He gestured sharply with his hands, clearly upset about something. The conversation lasted several minutes before he ended it and returned to his quarters. Arvin played back the recording. Corvan's voice came through clearly. The ceremony proceeds as planned tomorrow. The human will be present, as will the princess. This is our opportunity. The device must be in place before dawn. Yes, I understand the risk, but if this succeeds, the humans will be discredited, and we can end this foolish alliance before it truly begins. Zara's face had gone pale. He's planning another attack. At tomorrow's ceremony. We have to tell the king, Jake said. They rushed through the palace to the king's private chambers. Guards initially tried to stop them, but Arvin's authority and Zara's insistence got them through. The king and queen received them in their study. Surprised by the late-night intrusion, Jake let Zara explain. She played the recording, showed the encrypted messages, and laid out everything they'd discovered. The king's expression grew darker with each revelation. Lord Corvin, the king said, his voice heavy with betrayal. He served my father before me. I trusted him with the highest secrets of state, which is exactly why his betrayal is so dangerous. Arvin said. He knows all our security protocols. He can bypass most of our safeguards. The queen looked at Zara with concern. You could have been killed investigating this. Why didn't you come to us sooner? We needed proof, Zara said. Accusations against a noble of Corvan's rank require evidence. The king stood and began pacing. We must cancel the judgment ceremony. Evacuate the palace. Search every room for devices. No, Jake said. Everyone turned to look at him. He felt bold speaking up to the king, but he pressed on. If you cancel, Corvan will know we're onto him. He'll destroy evidence and go underground. You'll never find all his co-conspirators. What do you suggest? The king asked. Let the ceremony proceed. But we control it. We find the device beforehand and neutralize it. We let Corvan think his plan is working. Then, when he makes his move, we catch him in front of the entire court. That's incredibly risky, the queen said. But it's the only way to expose everyone involved, Zara added, supporting Jake. If we just arrest Corvan now, others in the conspiracy could remain hidden. The king looked at his daughter for a long moment. You've changed, he said softly. When did my cautious, protocol-following daughter become willing to take such risks? Zara glanced at Jake. I learned from someone that sometimes instinct matters more than careful planning. That doing the right thing is worth the danger. The king sighed deeply. Then he nodded. Very well. We proceed with the ceremony. Captain Arvin, you will lead a covert security team to search for the device. Find it before dawn. And Corvin? Arvin asked. Watch him. But don't let him know he's being watched. Tomorrow, he will reveal himself before all the court. And justice will be served. As they left the king's chambers, Zara caught Jake's arm. They stood alone in the corridor while the others moved ahead. Thank you, she said quietly, for not walking away from this. You could have stayed safe. But instead you helped investigate. You put yourself at risk again. I couldn't let them hurt you, hurt anyone. I know. She looked up at him, her violet eyes intense in the dim light. That's what makes you different from anyone I've ever known. You act from the heart, not from calculation. And it makes you too remarkable. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken feelings. Jake wanted to say something. To explain how talking with her had become the best part of his days. How her laugh made him forget he was millions of miles from home. But the words wouldn't come. Finally, Zara smiled. Tomorrow will change everything. Whatever the king decides about the Shelvar bond, whatever happens with Corvan, nothing will be the same. Are you afraid? Jake asked. Yes, she admitted. But also excited. For the first time in my life, I don't know exactly what will happen next. And I find that I don't mind. As much as I should. She squeezed his hand briefly, then walked away to prepare for tomorrow's ceremony. Jake stood in the corridor for a long time. His hand still warm from her touch, wondering how a simple security officer from Earth had ended up in the middle of an alien conspiracy. Fighting beside a princess he was starting to care about more than was probably wise. Dawn came too quickly. Jake had barely slept, his mind running through everything that could go wrong. By the time Soren arrived to help him dress for the judgment ceremony, the sun was painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Captain Arvin found the device 2 hours ago. Soren informed him quietly as he adjusted Jake's formal clothing. It was hidden in one of the ceremonial pillars, disguised as a decorative element. Very sophisticated. It would have killed everyone within 30 feet of the platform. Jake's stomach turned. The king and queen would have been standing there. Zara, hundreds of nobles. Did they disarm it? Yes. And they left it in place so Corvan won't suspect. They've modified it to emit smoke instead of an explosion when triggered. Dramatic, but harmless. The ceremony was set to begin in an hour. Jake made his way to the Great Hall, where thousands of Valens had gathered. The chamber was even more impressive than the courtyard where he'd first met the royal family. Crystal columns rose hundreds of feet into the air. Floating platforms held members of the nobility. The floor was made of polished stone that reflected the light like a mirror. Kyle and Megan found him in the crowd. They looked nervous, but determined. Ambassador Lisa wanted us to tell you good luck, Megan said. Whatever happens today, you've already done Earth proud. Just try not to tackle any more princesses, Kyle added with a grin. We're running out of diplomatic ways to explain that. Jake laughed despite his nerves. His friends moved off to join the other humans in a designated section. He was directed to stand near the front, close to the royal platform. The ceremony began with traditional music, haunting melodies played on instruments Jake had never seen. Then, the royal family entered. The king and queen walked with perfect dignity. Their robes flowing behind them, Zara followed, dressed in formal purple robes that seemed to shimmer with embedded lights. She caught Jake's eye as she passed and gave him the smallest smile. They took their places on the raised platform. Jake noticed Arvin and his guards positioned strategically around the hall. They looked relaxed, but Jake could see the tension in their postures. They were ready. Lord Corvan stood among the senior nobles, his face a mask of calm superiority. He showed no sign of knowing his plan had been discovered. The king rose and addressed the assembled crowd. His voice, amplified by the hall's acoustics, carried to every corner. We gather today for a judgment ceremony. An honor not performed in 3 generations. Jake Morrison of Earth performed Shelvar, the sacred act of life-saving, for Princess Zara Lynn. Today, we determine how to honor this deed. The king recounted the events of the attack, Jake's heroic action, and the deliberations that had followed. He spoke of the challenges of honoring a human according to Valen tradition. Many voices have spoken over these past days, the king continued. Some argued that Jake Morrison should be given lands and titles. Others suggested monetary rewards. Still others claimed he should simply be thanked and sent home. Jake felt every eye in the hall on him. His heart pounded, but we must look beyond tradition to the spirit of what this human did. He saw danger and acted without hesitation, without thought of reward, without even knowing who he saved. This is the purest form of Shelvar our ancestors envisioned. The king gestured to Jake. Approach, Jake Morrison. Jake walked forward on shaking legs. He climbed the steps to the platform and stood before the king. Up close, he could see ancient wisdom in the monarch's eyes. I hereby grant you the title of Velshara, protector of the crown. This title has not been bestowed in over a century. It carries with it a permanent position as guardian and advisor to Princess Zara Lynn, a seat on the Royal Advisory Council, and the respect of all Valen people. Gasps echoed through the hall. Even nobles who had argued for honoring Jake seemed shocked by the magnitude of the title. But, the king continued, this title also requires you to remain on our world, to serve in this capacity for as long as you are able. I will not command you to accept. The choice must be yours. Jake looked at the king, then at Zara. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes asked a question. Stay or go? Earth or here? Safety or the unknown? Before Jake could answer, Lord Corvin stepped forward. Your Majesty, I must object. The king turned slowly. Object? Corvan? On what grounds? This human has been here less than a week. We know nothing of his true character or intentions. To grant him such a title is reckless and dangerous. Corvan's voice rose, and Jake saw calculation in his eyes. The noble was making his move, trying to create chaos before accepting the title. Interesting, the king said coldly. You speak of danger, Corvan. Tell me, what do you know of danger? Corvan blinked, confused. Your Majesty? Captain Arvin, if you would. Arvin stepped forward and activated a holographic display. The recording from last night played for everyone to hear. Corvan's voice filled the hall, speaking of attacks and discrediting humans. The color drained from Corvan's face. He looked around frantically, seeing guards moving to surround him. This is a trick. A human deception. No deception, the king said, his voice like ice. We found your communication device. We found the bomb you had planted in this very hall. We have evidence of your contact with the radical faction that tried to kill my daughter. Murmurs of shock and anger rippled through the crowd. Nobles backed away from Corvan as if he carried a disease. You were my father's advisor. The king continued, pain evident in his voice now. I trusted you. And you betrayed not just me, but our entire people. Corvan's expression twisted with fury. You trust these humans, these primitive creatures who think with their emotions instead of logic. They will corrupt our society, drag us down to their level. He pointed at Jake. Look at him. He doesn't even understand what he's done. He acts on instinct like an animal. Yes, Princess Zara said, speaking for the first time. She stood and walked to stand beside Jake. He does act on instinct. The instinct to protect others. The instinct to help without asking for reward. The instinct to do what's right even when it's dangerous. She looked at Corvan with contempt. You claim to act on logic, but your logic led you to treason and attempted murder. I'll take his instincts over your logic any day. The hall erupted in noise. Some nobles cheered Zara's words. Others argued with their neighbors. Arvin's guards seized Corvan and began dragging him away. He shouted accusations and curses until they removed him from the hall. Slowly, order returned. The king raised his hand for silence. Jake Morrison, he said again. In light of what has happened, in recognition of not just your heroic act but your help in uncovering this conspiracy, I ask again, will you accept the title of Velshara? Jake looked at Zara. She had stood up for him in front of her entire court. She had called his instincts valuable, his way of thinking right. In her eyes, he saw hope and something deeper, something that made his heart race. He looked out at the crowd, at all the alien faces watching him. A week ago, he'd been a simple security officer. Now he had a chance to be part of something bigger, to build bridges between humans and Valens, to help both species understand each other. And if he was honest with himself, he didn't want to leave Zara. Not now. Maybe not ever. Your Majesty, Jake said clearly. I accept. I will serve as Velshara, with honor and dedication. The hall exploded in cheers. Valens stamped their feet in their traditional sign of approval, creating a thunder that shook the chamber. The king smiled, looking genuinely pleased for the first time since Jake had met him. Then it is done, the king announced. Jake Morrison is hereby recognized as Velshara, protector of the crown, friend to the Valon people, and bridge between our species and humanity. Zara stepped forward and placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. It was a formal gesture, but her touch was warm. Welcome, Jake Morrison. It will be an honor to work alongside you. The honor is mine, Your Highness. Zara, she corrected quietly. Just for him. Remember? The ceremony concluded with more traditional music and formal declarations. Jake was presented with a ceremonial token of his office, a small crystal pendant that seemed to contain swirling stars. Nobles approached to congratulate him, though some looked uncertain about having a human among their ranks. Ambassador Lisa found him in the crowd. This is unprecedented, she said, but she was smiling. Earth is going to lose their minds when they hear about this. Our security officer becomes an alien noble. I'm still just me, Jake protested. No, you're not. You're a symbol now. The human who saved a princess and changed the relationship between two species. She patted his arm. But don't let it go to your head. We still need you to remember where you came from. As the crowd began to disperse, Zara made an announcement. I wish to establish a new initiative, with my father's permission, a human Valan cultural exchange program, designed to bring our peoples together to learn from each other's strengths. The king nodded his approval. An excellent idea. Who will lead this program? I will, father. Along with Jake Morrison as co-director. More approving stamps from the crowd. Jake looked at Zara in surprise. She hadn't mentioned this part of the plan. We'll need a team, Zara continued. I propose we start with the humans already here. Kyle Henderson and Megan Foster have both shown dedication and understanding of our culture. Kyle and Megan looked shocked but excited. They quickly agreed. Over the following hours, details were worked out. The program would bring humans to Valon to study their technology and philosophy. In return, Valens would visit Earth to learn about human art, emotion, and instinct. It was ambitious and unprecedented. As the sun set that evening, Jake found himself once again in the Eastern Garden with Zara. They sat on their familiar bench by the upward-flowing stream, but everything had changed. Are you sure about this? Zara asked quietly. Staying here, I mean. You'll be far from home, surrounded by aliens, living in a society you barely understand. I'm sure, Jake said. Earth will always be home. But I've found something here. Something important. The cultural exchange program? That too. But mainly. He hesitated, then decided to be honest. Mainly? You, these past few days. Talking with you. Working alongside you. It's been the best part of being here. I don't want to give that up. Zara was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. My whole life, I've followed rules and protocols. I've done what was expected, said the right words, made the logical choices. But you've shown me something different. You've shown me that sometimes the heart knows things logic cannot explain. She took his hand, her fingers lacing through his. It was such a simple gesture, but it felt momentous. I don't know what happens next. She continued. Our peoples are different. We think differently. Feel differently. There will be challenges, Probably, Jake agreed. But we'll figure it out. Together. She smiled at that, a real smile that lit up her whole face. Together. I like the sound of that. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the strange alien stars appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the palace, Kyle and Megan were celebrating. Somewhere on Earth, Jake's family would soon learn their son had become an alien noble. Somewhere in the galaxy, humans and Valens were starting to build a new kind of relationship. But in that moment, in that garden, Jake Morrison was exactly where he needed to be. 6 months later, Jake stood in a shuttle preparing to land on Earth. Beside him, Princess Zara stared out the viewport at the blue planet below, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's beautiful," she said. "Wait until you see the mountains," Jake replied. The cultural exchange program had exceeded everyone's expectations. Humans were learning Valon technology, advancing Earth science by decades. Valons were discovering human art and music, finding emotional expression they'd never known before. Some of the most rigid Valon nobles had actually cried listening to human symphony orchestras. Jake had become something of a celebrity on both worlds, the human who saved a princess, the bridge between species. But he tried to stay grounded, remembering what Ambassador Lisa had said. He was still just Jake, doing his best to do the right thing. His relationship with Zara had deepened over the months. They worked together daily, and their friendship had grown into something neither of them had quite named yet. Love between human and Valen seemed impossible. But then again, so had everything else they'd accomplished. As the shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, Jake felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He was bringing an alien princess home to meet humanity. How crazy was that? Zara sensed his mood and squeezed his hand. "Are you worried?" "A little. You're about to meet my family. My friends. They might not know what to make of you." Creeded. "Will they judge me?" "Probably. But they'll judge you by your actions, not your appearance. That's the human way." She smiled. "Then, I have nothing to worry about. I learned from the best how to act with honor." The shuttle landed in a field outside Jake's hometown. As they disembarked, Jake saw his parents waiting, along with what looked like half the town. News cameras pointed at them. It was overwhelming, but then his mom pushed through the crowd and hugged him fiercely. "Jake. Oh, my baby. I've missed you so much." "Mom, I'm fine. I'm great, actually." He turned to Zara. "Mom? Dad? This is Princess Zara Lynn of Valen." Zara bowed formally. "It is an honor to meet the family who raised such a remarkable person." Jake's mom looked at Zara, taking in the violet eyes and lavender skin. Then she smiled warmly. "Any friend of Jake's is family to us. Welcome to Earth. Dear, are you hungry?" "I made a pot roast." Just like that, the tension broke. Zara relaxed, and Jake felt a weight lift from his shoulders. This was going to work out. That night, after dinner and countless questions from excited relatives, Jake and Zara walked through the woods near his childhood home. Earth smells surrounded them, pine and earth and growing things. "Your world is so alive," Zara said. "Everything feels vibrant and chaotic. I love it. It's not as orderly as Valen. No. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe both our worlds need a little of what the other has." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Jake, do you ever regret your choice? Accepting the title? Staying on Valen?" "Not for a second," he said honestly. "Do you regret asking me to stay?" "Never." She stepped closer. "In my culture, we have a saying, Jelana. It means, the choice that changes everything. Meeting you was my Zelana, mine too." They stood together in the Earth forest, human and alien, two people from different worlds who had found something extraordinary in each other. Above them, both Earth's moon and the distant light of Valen's sun shone in the sky. Jake Morrison had been a simple security officer who made a split-second decision to protect someone in danger. That decision had changed his life, changed a princess, and started to change the relationship between two species. And as he stood there with Zara's hand in his, looking up at the stars that no longer seemed quite so far away, Jake knew that his greatest adventure was just beginning.